Hello and welcome everybody, this is Rainer and this is my channel Rainier Books. Another video from me, which is a Sunday sum-up on August the 7th of 2022. The books that I finished last week, the books that I start reading now and that I hope to get further on reading during the next week and into August. Let's go! Well, this week was a very successful week. It was the last day of my holiday, so I'm working again tomorrow, and there was no soccer, no football championships in England anymore, so I had really focused on reading this week, and I finished not one but 4 books last week, which is a pretty good record for me. Some of the books were kind of short, I have to admit. The first one I read in Swedish. It was a preparation for a book long list read, and that was Mitt namn Lucy Barton. My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout, which introduces us in 2016. It introduced us to the character of Lucy Barton, a writer who comes from a very poor background in Amgash, Illinois, who got a scholarship, who sort of escaped her parents and her siblings to start a new course in life, who married, and now she's in her middle ages, and she's sort of reflecting back on the time when her mother visited her in hospital, when she was in hospital for a couple of weeks. She had a lot of talks with her mother. She has a very problematic relationship to her mother, but this time it is a strange kind of getting a little bit closer to each other, although her mother, for example, never said that she loved her daughter. Mitt namn Lucy Barton. This was a preparation for me for another book that comes a little bit later in this video. Very good book by Elizabeth Strout, I have to say. It's memoir come fiction, I think that's what the genre is called. It is written like a memoir, but it is fiction, of course, but because Elizabeth Strout is the voice that Lucy Barton is actually the voice that we're hearing, but the voice was created by Elizabeth Strout. Very poetic, very beautiful reading. The second book I finished is my favorite so far on the Booker long list. I will only read 6 of the 13 books. I have decided that because I'm interested in only 6 of the 13 books. And the one that the super hype of 2022 is really worth every word about it. And this is Nightcrawling by Leila Mottley. Leila Mottley is only 20 years old today, and she started this novel when she was 16 years old in Oakland, California. This is about a young black woman in Oakland who gets into trouble. She wants to finance the rent. She wants to pay the rent because otherwise her family gets evicted, and she ends up on the streets, and she ends up in a sexual abuse case where she is sexually abused by a dozen police officers in Oakland. A case that was actually real, but Leila Mottley has used this real case and built a kind of different story, background story around it, about the sexual exploitation, but also about the vulnerability of black girls and women. And she created a beautiful character, one of the most beautiful characters I've read in the last years, actually, around this Kiara Johnson, 17-year-old girl from Oakland, California. How she's taking care of others, but actually she would need somebody, a parent, a father or a mother, to take care of her. A big success, this book already, and it's also already translated into many languages. The next one is also already translated, at least into German. Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These. It's a very short book, the shortest book ever nominated for the Booker long list, as Leila Mottley was the youngest ever author nominated for the Booker long list. This one is the shortest book ever, with 110 pages. And Small Things Like These plays out in 1985, and the protagonist is Bill Furlong, a coal dealer. He's delivering coal to people in a small Irish town, and in 1985 Christmas is coming, and this reads like a Christmas carol, like a Christmas story, but it is so much more, because in the background there is the convent, is the church, which is very powerful in Ireland, was and still is. Many people are Catholic in Ireland, and the Catholic Church is very prevalent here. They have a convent in this little town, and Bill Furlong meets a girl who is hungry. She is crying after her child. She is dirty. She was locked into a shed, and apparently by the nuns who run the convent. And this is a book about the Magdalene laundries that I didn't know anything about. I have to admit that. The Magdalene laundries were slave work that was sort of run by the Catholic Church in Ireland, where 30,000 girls and women have been forced to labor, sometimes lifelong labor, where hundreds of women died, and even more women died than death certificates were issued. So this is a very bad case. It goes until 1996, and the Pope, who has recently apologized for the residential schools in Canada, should take a plane to Ireland and to give the next excuse now to the women of the Magdalene laundries. A great novel, very casually told in a very casual style, like it is a Christmas carol, like it is a Christmas story, but behind the Christmas, beyond the surface, there's so much more. There's a threatening atmosphere, there's a lot of knowledge about what happens in the convent, and the people who are silent, who live their normal lives, they don't speak up. And this is the atmosphere, and I think also that's why she chose a male character, that why she didn't focus on the girls, actually the victims of the Magdalene laundries, but Keegan comes from the other side, so to speak, from the normal population, how they sort of experience and how they realize what happened, or not realize what happened in the laundries. The fourth book that I finished this week was the second one by Elizabeth Strout, William, which is a sequel, but also a standalone novel about Lucy Barton. Again, here is, like already suggested in the name and the title, Oh William, Oh William. It is her ex-husband, William, who is the main character. She's telling a lot of stories about William, about this marriage that she had with him, about even the friendship that they still have long after the marriage is over, about the girls that they share as their daughters, but also about some other people, about where they come from and where everybody comes from. And William detects, for example, that he has a sister, a half-sister he didn't know anything about, and Lucy and William are making a day trip out to Maine to see that half-sister in her early 70s. Beautifully told, lots of wisdom about life, poetic, mature insights into relationships, into marriage, into friendships. This is really a great read. Also on the Booker long list, the third book from the Booker long list that I've read this week. And then I ran out of Booker books. I had no more Booker books to read. Actually, no more Booker books from the long list that is running right now. I'm waiting for two more books from the long list from the Stockholm City Library, and one is The Colony by Audrey and Magee. The other one is Case Study by Graeme, Macrae. I'm waiting for these two books. I'm number 2 in the queue, so I think it might take 2 or 3 weeks apparently until I get them, and I think the same amount of time is necessary for the book that I ordered now in England. That is The Trees by Rupert Everett. I ordered this book already in Sweden at a Swedish bookshop, and after 2 or 3 days they told me they can't deliver it, paid back the money, and now I tried to get it directly from England. So hopefully The Trees will arrive soon, within the next 14 days. So what am I going to do this week instead? I did not DNF 2 books, but I put away 2 books from the library that I had borrowed that were actually on my personal Booker suggestion long list, and that is Wayward by Dana Spiotta, which wasn't really my case. There was not real fire for me after 30, 40 pages, so I decided I wanted to have a good read now after the Booker books that I've read, and something that is really touching me from the first start. And this wasn't either the book by Julia Armfield, Our Wives Under the Sea, which definitely seems to be a really good book, but it's not the right time for me to read it right now. That's just the case. So I might return to Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Not now, though. Instead, I started one of my beautiful new projects. This project, you could call it the segment, the project, Read a book from the Booker shortlist from 1968 to today, from each year. But the funny thing is that I am allowed to pick myself a book from the shortlist. I read the descriptions, I read what they are about, and I decide which book I want to read. And from the first Booker shortlist ever in 1968, I chose Muriel Sparks' novel The Public Image. I started reading this one. It is about two actors in Rome, a very young British actress and her boyfriend, and apparently this is a relationship drama with a twist and a turn at the end. I'm very curious about it. It reads very good in the beginning. Muriel Spark, an author I have never read before. The Public Image. The second one, because I want to sort of spoil myself with a good thriller, is a book that arrived now these days. I think on Monday or on Tuesday I got it. This is Alex Finlay's thriller The Night Shift. I have talked about it before in my video Top 10 Thrillers that you should read during the summer. This is an American novel. Alex Finlay is an American author. This is about a murder case. Four teenagers were attacked in a little town, I think in New Jersey, yes. In 1999, 3 of them were killed and the case was never solved. And then 15 years later, again, 4 teenagers get attacked in the same little town in New Jersey. And this is The Night Shift by Alex Finlay. Sounds very good. And it got very nice blurbs by very famous authors like Lee Child, for example, who said, "Wow, this is crime fiction at its best. Instantly immersive, pacey and propulsive and full of surprises. Alex Finlay is the real deal. Believe me." I hope so. I will hold Lee Child accountable otherwise. And the third one that I want to read, not the whole book probably, but let's say 2 or 3 stories of it, because it's a short story collection that was very much praised and acclaimed before it came out. It's a debut author from the United States, from the Penobscot Nation in Maine. This is by Morgan Talty, Night of the Living Rez. Short stories from the Penobscot Reservation in Maine. In 12 striking, luminescent stories, author Morgan Talty, with searing humor, abiding compassion, and deep insight, breathes life into tales of family and a community as they struggle with a painful past and an uncertain future. So this was my reading last week. These are my plans for the next week. Tell me everything about your plans. I made, actually, last thing to say, about all three of the Booker books that I read last week, I made a single review which is already out on the internet. You can watch this. And please drop me a comment down below what you are reading, what you are doing, what you would like to do. And if you read Muriel Spark or whatever, I'm very curious to hear from you. Thanks very much for watching this. Thanks very much for subscribing to the channel. That's of great help. And I see you soon on Tuesday with another video, Canadian books to read this summer. Bye-bye. Have a good evening.